Welcome everyone to our community development public hearing. We have two items tonight. It is May 11th, 2023. The time is 6 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. There are no opening remarks except we expect civility, and we're going to let the people speak. And if you don't agree with them, I would ask that you be respectful and quiet. If you do agree with them, you can raise your hand to let me know that you agree with the speaker. So any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. I'll poll for conflicts of interest on either case. No?
Nope.
Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead with item 1, which is CUP22-0010 Old Highway 95 Storage. This is a reconsideration, and I would like our attorney, Pat Braden, to remind the board about the procedure for reconsideration and what we're looking for.
Okay, Pat Braden, Civil Deputy Prosecutor for the record. A request for reconsideration is basically asking the board for another look at the final decision that the board's previously made through a written request submitted within 14 days of the decision. Requests for reconsiderations are limited to the grounds set forth in Idaho Code Section 67-6535, and I'll get back to that in a minute. Appeals are based on the grounds set forth in the written notice of appeal or request for consideration, in this case the latter, and shall be heard and acted upon by the hearing body in a de novo proceeding. That means you can accept new evidence along with the evidence already in the record. The burden of proof shall fall upon the appellant, in this case the party or parties requesting reconsideration, to establish by a preponderance of the evidence that the department of the board or that the board action in this case was erroneous. Okay. The hearing shall be informal and strict rules of evidence shall not apply. Parties can be represented by counsel. They can present testimony and written evidence. The course of proceedings are to be regulated to assure that there is a full disclosure of all relevant facts and issues. The order of testimony should go substantially as follows. There can be some deviation to this at the chair's discretion, but we would do an introduction of the appeal or request by staff. Mr. Finkel is here to do that. Then the appellant gives their case in chief. Then all persons wanting to testify in support of the appellant go next. Then the county's case in chief. Then any testimony or evidence in support of the county's position, and then appellant has the last word with rebuttal. At the close of the hearing body can take action on the request for reconsideration, or you can take it under advisement for no more than 14 days after the close of testimony. And the substantive standard for request for reconsideration is contained in subsection 2A of Idaho Code Section 67-6535. And the two grounds given in that subsection are: 1, failure to identify the nature of compliance or non-compliance with express approval standards, or 2, failure to explain compliance or non-compliance with relevant decision criteria. Either of those can be grounds for invalidation of a prior approval or the denial of the same on appeal.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you. And Planner Hillen?
Yeah. Yes, Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County for the record. The CUP22-0010 for a mini storage facility and boat RV storage was approved. The applicant in that case was Jason Matheson. Today we are here to consider a request for reconsideration. The appellant in this case is Bridget Coate. And to help, I do have a slide here to just have those general rubric of the order of presentation. Again, as Pat described, the chair has the discretion to follow these. steps. But yeah, so introduction of the appeal, I will do that briefly. I'm just going to go over brief recap, nothing new in the introduction, just a recap of the proposal and the contents of the request for reconsideration, and briefly go over the public comment that we got for the reconsideration, and then we'll go into the appellant's case in chief, and then any testimony for the appellant county's case in chief, and then testimony in support of the county, and then the appellant will have the chance for the rebuttal. So with that, I'll just do a recap and introduction. The parcel, the location of the proposed mini storage facility is located south of the city of Athol. It's located on Old Highway 95. It is located in the rural zone. Mini storage facilities are permitted in the rural zone with the approval of a conditional use permit. And there is commercial zone property to the southeast as well. It's located in the transitional land use designation according to the comprehensive plan. And it is located within the area of city impact for the city of Athol. This is not a city boundary, it's the area of city impact. It is currently developed with a pole structure and access onto Old Highway 95. These are some photos taken of the property, the vegetation along Old Highway 95 looking north and south. And here's a recap of the proposal. 16 storage units divided into 468 individual storage units. There's a breakdown there of the sizes and the quantity. And there will also be an area for recreational vehicles and boats. It will be unmanned facility, no office building or restroom facilities. Security measures include fencing, cameras, lighting, and a gate. Customers will reserve units online or by phone. Hours of operation for the phone will be Monday through Saturday, but the site can be accessed 24/7. And the applicant did propose a 20-foot vegetative buffer, and there will be a 5-foot buffer adjacent to the railroad area. But the 20-foot buffer was made a condition of approval. And here's just the overview of the site plan. You'll see the vegetative buffer there, and you'll see the railroad to the east. So it's not north facing, north is to the right there. So the east is where the railroad is, and that's where the buffer doesn't need to be 20 feet, but everywhere else it does need to be 20 feet wide. And there's an overpass area. The pink area is being reserved for a future overpass for Lakes Highway District's project to connect Parks Road to Old Highway 95. And then just going over the course of proceedings and how we got here today, the applicant did submit a complete and sufficient application. We did have a hearing in front of the hearing examiner February 2nd, 2023. The hearing examiner recommended approval on February 16th, 2023. The board held deliberations on February 23rd. And on March 3rd, the board approved and signed the order of decision. On March 13th, Community Development received a request for reconsideration. And just recapping on the deliberations that were held on March 3rd, 2 of the concerns were focused on the fire mitigation measures, specifically the firewalls and the water pond. Our director, David Callahan, stated that firewalls are permitted with the building code, and then the pond would be overseen by the fire district upon construction. And that's what we'll know, how we'll keep from freezing, probably through an agitator. And then we did, as a condition of approval, we'll require a 20-foot buffer, which exceeds our requirement for a 15-foot vegetative buffer. The board voted to unanimously approve the request. When we received the request, the details are broken down as followed. There were concerns for traffic on Old Highway 95, light pollution, security, negative effect on wildlife, and improper public notice. I do want to state that when that was brought, we did consult with Pat Braden. Notice is generally not appropriate grounds for reconsideration, but we do want to just emphasize it was included in as a concern. And for the public comment leading up to this reconsideration, there were 8 comments submitted in support of the appellant's request, 2 comments opposed, and the list of concerns is consistent with that was the same concerns for the reconsideration. And if you have any questions for me, I'll answer them. Otherwise, we can move on to the appellant's case.
Okay, questions for staff?
Nope, thank you.
No.
All right, then Bridget Coates, please.
Oh, I will bring up your PowerPoint.
Okay, so
So
what
just-
do I do? Just press?
Yeah, you should be able to just click it. Yeah, I'll go pull up.
Click
And Jennifer, what's
the red
this?
button?
10 minutes or 15 minutes?
The laser pointer, so you can do the up arrow, down arrow for slides.
Okay, so which one do I go to?
She'll pull it up.
Okay, thanks.
I'll come right up there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And Pat, did we have statute for saying how long the appellant gets?
Not as strictly regulated as the normal public hearings, but I would say probably 20 minutes would be a reasonable time.
Okay. Ms. Coate,
Okay.
is 20 minutes sufficient?
I'll just take two minutes of your time. I have a few photos, few videos, and I pre-wrote everything so I wouldn't ramble. Thank you for hearing me. Okay, I'm ready. The property in question is a rural neighborhood and not zoned for commercial use. We learned about this when our dogs were barking at a tree falling on March the 6th. This is one of our sheds, and that's how close the property is to our residence. We had no prior knowledge of this. We didn't receive anything in the mail, we did not see a sign, and we live right across. This is a photo of our next, how do I do next?
The arrows up and down.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like it
Try the down
restarted.
arrow.
I'll do it.
Whoop. Okay. Our property is on the left, and the property in question is on the right circled. So that is how close we live, and we didn't receive anything, and commercial zoning increases neighborhood crime. Storage facilities bring theft and vandalism throughout the country. It will also bring litter, drugs, noise, traffic, and light pollution to our quiet neighborhood. These are from KHQ Coeur d'Alene Press. There's one where a man barricaded himself in a Post Falls storage facility, and he didn't even live here, and he was found inside living. And then just the crime in storage units. It is also documented that it will bring vagrancy, and we want to be able to see the stars at night without the light interfering with the view. There are over 65 storage facilities. Okay, now I need to start this on a video. There's over 65 storage facilities from Post Falls to Sagal, and not including Sandpoint. This week, we noticed at least 3 new storage facilities being built in our area as we speak. One of which is the new luxurious condo storage facility in the city limits of Athol, about 1 mile from our property. We do not need a storage facility in a residential area. And I didn't have time, but I have them all. I wrote out every single one of the 65 storage facilities from Post Falls to Sagal, not including. Okay, next. There's the one going in down the street from our house in Athol. This development would affect wildlife. It would deter them and have an impact on them. When infrastructure is poorly considered, we endanger wildlife, wild places, and our own community. For years, we have had herds of elk come through our property, almost nightly, to bed down. Sometimes we get as many as, okay, now I need this as a video. We get as many as 50 to 100 head of elk nightly. We also have daily wild turkeys, deer, dozens of quails, many pairs of doves, evening grosbeaks, owls, and swallows that migrate here every year. We also get moose coming through too. We just want to be able to witness all these creatures every day. We don't want any wildlife to be pushed out. This is just some of we provide a water trough for all the creatures. We feed them water because it's hot and it's cold. We have a heated water trough in the winter because there's no water available. The town of Athol has load limits on its road for 6 months out of each year to protect the roads. Athol is a small town with a country way of life with a population about 1,000. We do not want this building to proceed in our neighborhood. We have worked hard for decades to enjoy our retirement on our property with all the wildlife surrounding us. We do not want to have to deal with crime, traffic, litter, noise, or light pollution. Thank you. Thank you.
Questions for her?
No questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so everybody in support, Jason Matheson, okay, hang on, that's opposed. All right, Douglas Campney, in favor of the reconsideration, may wish to speak.
Do you want 3 or 5 minutes?
Do you
My
think
name's
you
Doug
need,
Campney.
do you think you need more than 3 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do 5 minutes then.
I don't think 5 minutes is enough for what I've got to say.
Well, you'll have to
So
do
we
it
got 20
5
minutes
minutes.
for the entire appellant? That's it? Okay.
For individual
All right,
speakers
let's
is
start
5.
then. Anyway, my name is Douglas Campney. I reside at 27793 North Hayloft Road in Athol. I'm opposed to this storage facility because, first of all, we never got any notification at all about the first public hearing. Certain individuals tried to say that signs were posted and so forth. I drive by there every single day. Nothing was ever posted. We never got a notification in the mail. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here now. We would have been at that original meeting. So we had no point to oppose at that time. Since then, the lot has been completely cleared. The storage building that was there was an older gentleman. I knew him by Bob. I didn't know his last name. He lived there. He lived in a shed, a shop. There's no power. There may be power, but there is no water. One of my main concerns is you put in a facility this big with no water. What do we do about fire suppression? In the last 2 years alone, there have been 2 wildfires that the sheriffs have come to our home and told us that we may need to evacuate. With no fire suppression there, and who knows what the response time could be for fire, this entire facility is surrounded by vegetation, trees. Wildfire could take us all out in a matter of minutes. Another big concern is the aquifer. What do we do about the aquifer? When we have the potential for maybe 100 or 2 or 3, who knows how many RVs, boats, whatever, are going to be stored there. What are they going to do about containment for that sort of thing? I don't want oils and everything leaking into the aquifer, and I don't think anybody that lives in that area wants any of that. Silverwood does a great job at containing their aquifer and protecting it. I think these people should have to deal with the same thing. Old 95 is a very old highway. It's 2 lanes, not well maintained, rarely plowed in the wintertime. Directly south of this property, there's an old bridge that is in very bad need of reconstruction. When you rise over, coming from the south, it's a complete dead, you cannot see anything. It's very dangerous and hazardous. I can't imagine large RVs and boats traveling that. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get killed. Another big concern is how did this even get by, considering this entire area is zoned residential and 5-acre zoning. how did somebody come in there and get a conditional permit for commercial property? I just don't understand it. Now, does somebody know somebody? What happened? I don't understand. And another concern is, as I already mentioned, is the highway. At one point when I first found out about this, I contacted Kootenai County Zoning. I spoke with an individual, I believe her name might have been Brooke. She told me that there would have to be an impact study done on Old 95. Any improvements that were found or deemed necessary would have to be addressed. But she also stated that somebody could be paid off. When I asked what does that mean, what does a payoff mean, she kind of snickered and said, that is up to you to decide. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean the property owner can pay off another community member or city member and let something else slide by without anybody's knowledge? I'm only one person. We're a small group, a small community. This is a growing town. Why do we need a facility with the potential of 600 storage units in a town that has a population of just under 700 people? This facility isn't for the local people that live in that area. It's going to draw people from all over. Bridget had a very valid point when she mentioned crime, litter. I've been to several storage facilities. The trash that's out there is incredible. People don't care. When they don't live there, when they're not directly impacted, they don't care. They're going to leave their garbage. They're going to throw it out the windows. We're just talking about devastating our nice little community. I mean, it may mean nothing to some people, but it means a lot to us. I lived there for 20 years, and things like this are just driving the locals away. I don't know how much more I can say that's really going to make a difference. But I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Any questions?
No, I appreciate the points that you made. So,
Sorry, I was a little rushed. I really would like to have a lot more time, but under
I just
time
have-
constraints.
I have one question. Do you ever travel Old 95 from Chilco down to 53?
I travel Old 95 every single day.
Okay, so there's storage units kind of at the corner of Ohio Match and Old 95. Have you been through that?
It used to be, what was it, the Alpine gas station? Is that the one you're
Nope,
talking
I'm
about?
talking on the west side.
And what about the,
Idaho lumber,
right, yeah.
North of Post and Pole.
yes.
I
Very
just
good
wonder
point.
if you're familiar with those.
Yes, I am
storage.
familiar with those.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just another reason, do we really need another one? And another fact is, as Bridget mentioned, we've got several that are under construction right now, including the one at the old Alpine gas station, which is a small RV park. One other thing I might mention, if I have the time, while speaking to Kootenai County Zoning, they indicated to me that the person that's trying to develop this property was not given a permit to build a residence because there's no water on the property. They were also denied a permit for a camping and RV park. So how do they get a storage facility approved?
Any questions, Bill?
Pardon?
Any questions for him?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rick Coate, in favor of reconsideration. Do you wish to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
So is this, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Rick. I'm Bridget's husband, obviously. Storage units are a necessity of life nowadays. A lot of people are going to need them eventually. I might myself. But putting a storage facility, which is pretty much a commercial business in residential areas, and as the notice said, it's unmanned, kind of invites vagrancy, and as others have said, when you don't own the property, you care less for it. People throw stuff out they don't want to store anymore, throw it over the fence, whatever. This doesn't help anything. The crime that tends to bring. would you want this next to your house? It should be in a commercial area, is what I'm trying to say. It shouldn't be in a residential area. I don't know why they wouldn't allow him to put a house on 13 acres. What caused what that road, Parks Road going in, makes that he can't put a house there. That's for a different hearing, I guess. But, and a conditional permit is what? What does that mean? Okay. I'm asking, we don't need this there. Put it somewhere else, fine. Do something else with the property. That's it. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else here to speak in favor of the reconsideration? Okay. So then we will.
Duncan, I can
Yes.
check to see online whether or not.
Oh, yes,
there's-
please. Thank you.
If there's anybody on Zoom right now, either Ivy, Monica, or Rick, that wishes to speak in support of the appellant, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'd like to say something. Can you hear me okay?
You can, go ahead.
I'm Rick Bachman. I own that piece of property that's surrounded on two sides by this proposed storage facility. First point I can tell you in the introduction, that structure that you spoke of, as was mentioned by the one gentleman, is no longer there. They've cleaned out the whole area. They've taken down all the trees. It's all bare. So that portion of the introduction is wrong. There is no structure. There's nothing there but open land. Secondly, in the introduction, she spoke about a 20-foot buffer. Wrong. I went out there and checked those property lines. There is not a 20-foot buffer. So if this conditional permit is based upon a condition that there be a 20-foot vegetative buffer, they've already violated it. There is not a 20-foot buffer. At most, it's 10 foot. I would reiterate everything that's been said so far. This is a residential area. This is a country, quiet residential area. This is an area that we sought, obtained, and moved into because of that. And the allowance of this commercial facility, particularly my piece of ground, you've thrown me under the bus. You've thrown my security. You've thrown my privacy. You've thrown my risk of future offense from each one of these people that are coming in and out of there under the bus. And you have also put at risk this aquifer. I can tell you I had to go down quite a bit. My security, you've thrown my privacy. So I'm strongly opposed to it and ask you to reconsider and say no, because we are the community that you're affecting. We are the community also that you're supposed to be protecting.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else on Zoom?
Could something that, because I was so rushed, I'm sorry. Has the Parks Road?
No, sorry, hang on. Hopefully it'll get answered in a little bit with the county side. Okay.
So again, I have iPhone 2, I've got Ivy, I've got Monica. If, again, you're in support of the appellant's case, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. All right, so now we will go back to the county.
And I believe the applicant is also here too. The original applicant is here to follow me.
Sure.
I can also provide some.
Somewhat.
I have some slides as well.
Oh, okay. And Amy will also, my part will be brief, so I have room for Amy and the applicant. First of all, as far as the notice, Essentially, what the case law says is if you're able to come and testify at a meaningful time and in a meaningful manner during the proceedings, you've been afforded your due process, and the notice argument is waived. Another thing I would point out is that the change.org petition that's in your packet actually shows that the property was posted. It shows notice of public hearing for February 2nd, 2023 at 6 p.m. So I don't believe notice is an issue. Also, the APO list, if I can pull that up real quick, shows the people that were given notice within 300 feet of the property. That includes the following people: Richard Bachman, Catherine Ezel, Richard Coate, Henry Eyrode, EYRAUD, Idaho Forest Group LLC, Big Cabin Properties LLC, Ronald Stanford, Aaron Valance, Ronald Nillis, John Johnson, Hollyvale Rental Holdings LLC, Jason Matheson, Marie Bruce, and Roberta Campbell. Of course, I can't speak to any problems there might have been with the mail delivery. As far as compatibility goes, I think Carl's analysis hits the nail on the head, particularly in his second paragraph. It shows that he kind of wrestled with the question, but ultimately he came to the conclusion that it was compatible, at least in part because of the proposed highway district project with the overpass. It's kind of hard to see how somebody would actually want to live next to that overpass. So it seems that would be a use that would be complementary to the overpass as opposed to a residential property. Second of all, the board in its original decision required an increase in the vegetative buffer from originally proposed 15 feet to 20 feet. The applicant agreed with that, or was at least okay with that, except for a 5-foot buffer along the railroad. And I would point out because of this request for reconsideration, construction would not have started yet, so there would not be that buffer here yet. Second of all, as far as the wildlife goes, community development, Amy specifically received a email from Merritt Horseman from Idaho Fish and Game in discussing the effect that development has already had on wildlife. I think some of the slides that were provided show a fairly abundant wildlife in the area. And he states, with the future plans to build an overpass in the area, most of the remaining wildlife value will be lost during that construction. The Idaho Department of Fish and Game does not have any concerns with the development of the storage facility, and many of the recommendations we generally make for these types of projects have already been integrated into the plans. Now, regarding compliance, and this kind of goes more to what's actually what the legislature contemplated for these requests for reconsiderations, although compatibility, I think also fits within either of those two criteria as well. But as far as the fire flow requirements, that's set by the fire district. The original order of decision required compliance with the requirements of the fire district. The water would presumably come from the aquifer, so I don't think water quantity is necessarily an issue. It's just how the fire district wants those fire flow requirements met. With the highway district, I mentioned the plans for the overpass already. They're incorporated into the plan. The applicant's well aware of that. The neighbors are well aware of that. And again, the question is what actually would be compatible right next to that overpass. Finally, the HE report, Mr. Granrath mentioned other development nearby, such as the lumber manufacturing facility to the east, and a commercial/storage operation on a large parcel directly to the north. And there's also of course, the lumber mill at the end of what's now called First Street, which was Old Highway 95 and Highway 54. That is within the city of Athol, but it is nearby and a large development of note. So, and to sum this up, it's my belief that the original decision was properly made. It did discuss all the relevant approval standards and criteria for finding that the requirements for issuance of this conditional use permit were met. And I believe that this should be affirmed. And I would give any rest of my time to Ms. Hillen and the applicant.
Okay, any questions for Pat?
No.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Pat, and I will be brief. Pat touched on a lot of the items I was going to bring up as well. So again, here are the items in the original request, but I'll try and address some of the other concerns as well. Just before I dive into the request for their consideration, I stand corrected if the pole structure has been removed. It's my understanding that the property has been logged. An owner is allowed to log their property. Before they can actually start any construction, they are required to obtain a building permit and a site disturbance permit by a design professional. The site disturbance permit does address any runoff, stormwater, erosion, sediment control, any treatment of pollutions as well. So that is something that will be addressed at time of building. It is a concern we hold as well. As far as fire mitigation, Pat touched on this a little bit. I'm just going to go back to the order of decision on what the fire district stated. So the fire district is going to require a fire water pond with a volume of 60,000 gallons, as well as a fire pump with a minimum rate of flow of 1,500 gallons per minute. Again, we will consult with the fire district at time of building permit and development to ensure that it's properly installed. And that is what they require to address the fire mitigation for this facility. Lakes Highway District, we consult them. Old Highway 95 is within their jurisdiction. When we consulted them, their first response was a reference to the UPRR Bridge Realignment Project. In our order of decision, we refer to this as the overpass. It is going to connect Parks Road to Old Highway 95. And here's their initial response. I'm just going to read the outline, the underlined, but they basically just state, final property boundaries that the district will need to require will be based on final design of the bridge project, which is currently incomplete. To this end, we would appreciate the applicant's ongoing willingness to work with the district to facilitate both this UP and the district's bridge realignment project. Staff initially realized they didn't really address traffic specifically for this request, so we asked for additional information regarding traffic concerns, and this was the Lakes Highway District's response. They will require trip generation and distribution analysis, which will be required for the commercial approach permit. Essentially, when that will be sought is when we get a building permit application, we include Lakes Highway District in the review of that building permit, and that is usually when they require their own permit. And then prior to any finalization, we will consult with Lakes to ensure that that's done properly. It is usually through that commercial approach permit that they require any improvements to the road, any traffic mitigation measures as well. As far as light pollution, Kootenai County Code requires any outdoor lighting to be downward directed. It cannot cause a glare on the public right-of-way or adjacent parcels. With regard to the 20-foot buffer, if it is easier to retain existing vegetation, if the 20-foot buffer has been disturbed right now, we're going to stick by that 20-foot vegetative buffer. They will need to replant, and it will have to be trees that's properly 100% screen this property. But it is easier to retain, but we'll stick by our condition of approval. As far as security, it will be unmanned. And this is what the applicant proposes to mitigate the security on site. As far as negative effect on wildlife, there are existing deterrents currently. Pat touched on Idaho Fish and Games. I do have an excerpt from their comment, but existing deterrents would be that this is adjacent to Old Highway 95 and a railroad right-of-way on the west side of the property. There's additional railroad on the east side of the property. There is an existing airstrip to the northeast across the railroad, and there's a heavy commercial use. There's a log home construction to the east of the parcel, approximately 600 feet abouts east, and of course Silverwood and all that commercially zoned property to the southeast. The overpass will likely be the major deterrent for wildlife. That is Lakes Highway District's project, and there is area reserved for it. Here's a preliminary plan of where that overpass is going to go, right through the north half of the property. And here's just a general site plan again, and where that overpass is going. So I just want to add that the site was properly noticed. I double checked, and here's that list of property owners that we did send a mailing to. For the CUP, we only were required a 500-foot radius notice. As you can see, there's only 2 properties on Hayloft that would likely have gotten a notice in the mailing. And then here's our picture of our notice taken from Old Highway 95. And I do want to compare it to the one that was online. And this is not our photograph. This just tells me that it was seen. And then if something was not mailed, we get a return to sender, and usually a note from the office on why it couldn't be sent. This is just an example. This is not one of the individuals that were noticed for this project. It's just an example. And then I did take a picture of what it looks like, I believe 2 weeks ago. So that's my case.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So I think Jason Matheson is here.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're now going to start with everybody who is in support of the county, and we'll go with Jason Matheson first. Opposed to reconsideration, wishes to speak.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to take a couple of minutes here. I guess I get 5. That should be plenty. Thank you. I think the county did a great job addressing the concerns of the appellant, that things like the aquifer, the site disturbance, the vegetative buffers will of course all be properly addressed in the building permit process. We hired a surveyor to come to the property and to mark those property lines, and I myself took a measuring tape and measured off of those property lines to ensure that those vegetative buffers were met. And if the people that we hired crossed over those boundaries that I set, as Amy said, that is a condition of the permit, they will certainly be replanted and taken care of. But again, I measured them. I took a tape measure out and measured them, and then marked the trees that were to be up to that line to be removed. As we move forward, one of the things that we did from the very, very beginning in all of our communication with Amy, the vegetative buffers that have been mentioned are greater than what the county requires. I want to mention for the record that it was not the county that actually mandated those upon us. We voluntarily gave that as a part of our site plan because we care about being good neighbors. We've said from the very beginning through numerous emails with Amy, the first public hearings, we care about being good neighbors to those people around. I'm from a small town in southern Idaho of 3,500 people. It's not quite as small as Athol, but it's small. It's a farming community. I know exactly what it feels like to have development encroach on places that used to be a little bit quieter. With an overpass going through this property, however, that encroachment is going to happen regardless of whether or not the storage unit facility is built or not. I worked with the engineers from Lakes Highway District, the engineers who developed or who are developing the project, planning the project, and doing the traffic studies. Based on their documentation, the overpass will direct significant traffic to Old Highway 95. That is absolutely true. In fact, they estimate that about 16,000 trips per day will be taken down Old Highway 95 as traffic is rerouted off Highway 95 due to that overpass. The overpass will be built in a way that will accommodate that traffic. A boat and RV storage facility at peak traffic, this means 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the afternoon, develops less than 100 trips on average. The traffic that will be developed by the storage facility is minuscule compared to what the overpass will already bring. And while that is a concern for local residents, it's not us who's increasing the traffic, it's the Highway District's project that will reroute traffic down that road. I would also like to make mention with some of the neighbors, again, we do care about being good stewards of the land and good neighbors. Light pollution is something that we will take very seriously, and it is already addressed in the code and must be taken seriously. Again, I want to be able to see the stars in the countryside as well, and even with our facility built, it will be able to happen. Running on the east side of the subject property runs a railroad. That was addressed in the different site plans that were shown. What wasn't shown or addressed is there's also a railroad on the west side of Old Highway 95. That railroad sits about 15 feet above road grade. Therefore, the appellant's property is not visible from the site property or vice versa. I sat on this property for about 12 hours a year ago, a little over a year ago, and counted the number of trains that come down that track. In a 12-hour period, I counted 23 trains. The site itself will not cause any additional hindrance to local neighbors any more than a very, very active railroad already does. And that railroad generally stems from Idaho Forest Group, which was less than a mile up the road. Zoning was not changed through any of this process. Commercial zoning, rural zoning already accommodates this level of activity within that area. We didn't need to rezone it. It's not zoned commercially. For the record, neither is their property zoned residentially. It's all zoned rural, which a conditional use permit is well permitted within that zone. I think that's all I have to address. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Any questions, Mr. Matheson?
Yes, I do have some questions. One of the things that a lot of people tell me is that they're extremely tired of the growth. No one has told me that the county is not growing fast enough.
Agreed.
And I know for myself, if a business was put up right next to my home, I would be shocked, be very surprised. I recognize the fact that the property you have is really not suitable for a home, given the fact that it's right next to the railroad. You have an overpass that's going to be coming over it. And, one of the things that I think is really important, and you touched on it a little bit, is being a good neighbor. Being a good, a steward in essence in there. One of the things that concerns me the most is the fact that people are profiting off this community with their growth, and the rest of us are kind of standing by just looking at it going, what can we do? This isn't right. And so you have, we had the explanation of this other storage facility in Post Falls. What kinds of things do you think you could do to help keep people from either residing there without knowledge because it's not a manned facility, and keeping the trash mitigated so that it doesn't really cause, an eyesore for people, a real disruption to the community?
Now, those are fair questions. Thanks for bringing those up. Though the property is unmanned, that simply just means that we don't have an employee that will be there during business hours. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that the property will not be managed. I'm a local resident. I live in Coeur d'Alene. I'm an Idaho native. I know a lot of locals have serious concern about out-of-state personnel coming in and profiting off the county, per se. Again, I'm a local. I live here and grew up in Idaho. Addressing the trash and potentially people living there. Again, this property will be managed. Somebody will be on site daily to make sure that it's in good repair. Trash is picked up, for example. It will not be left to the wolves, so to speak. And then in regards to people living there, of course it will be contrary to the bylaws of the storage unit facility for people to do that. And the facility will be monitored through cameras and daily visitation by personnel and managers. So again, simply being unmanned, it doesn't mean that it's unmanaged. It simply means that somebody's not sitting in an office waiting for someone to pull up to the gate. Does that sufficiently answer those questions? Or?
Yeah, in the end, after we part this evening, after a decision is made, it's really up to people who make statements to live up to them.
Agreed. Yep.
And if there's anything I could encourage, it would be to talk with the people that surround there and find a way where you guys can be good neighbors too.
I agree.
Because that overpass will change the nature of that neighborhood. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Thank you for that suggestion. It's a very good point. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else want to speak in support of the county's position or against reconsideration? Anyone online?
Yeah, we have, again, Ivy or Monica, who have not yet spoken. If you are in support of the county's position, then you may go ahead and speak at this time.
All right, then we are ready for the rebuttal. So, Ms. Coate?
We were not aware of this overpass going on Parks Road. We got a public hearing notice a year and a half ago. It's still on my bulletin board at home. We thought we were just going to have a new bridge built, and we would be detoured to go on the freeway to go to like Super One. Only 3 people live on Parks Road. We don't understand why Parks Road is coming through. We didn't know about this until all of this happened. I do believe that there will be a lot of litter. We live on a dead-end road. People will come and dump things. We live on a frontage road where the double track is right there. We love our train. That's why we moved there. We love the train. And the reason we can't see his property is because we haven't cut down any of our trees, and that's why we have so much wildlife. And I do believe that once all these buildings get put in, we won't get our wildlife like we do every single day. Every day we get all of these animals, every day. And I'm retired, so that's part of my joy. So, do they have a chance to rebut? Just me? Anybody have any?
Yeah.
I'm in. All I can say is, for the sake of our old way of life, we don't want it there. We don't need it there. Thank you.
All right, any questions?
No questions.
Do you have questions?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so, am I missing anybody else? Okay, then I would take a motion to end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I move that we end public testimony for CUP 22-0010 Old Highway 95 storage and enter into deliberations.
Second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, are you, either of you, both of you, set to deliberate now, or would you like to put it to the next meeting?
I'm ready now.
Yeah, I think I can talk now.
Articulate it, okay. All right, which one of you would like to go first?
I'll let you, Bill.
Okay. I'm, after hearing all the testimony, seeing all the diagrams, I'm in favor of the project.
Okay. All right.
Well, that's it.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, one of the things that occurred to me during the first deliberation for this was the fact that nobody had spoken up against it. Because it's very important to me that at least the people who are going to be affected directly by it have some input. And clearly something happened, but I do believe the county did the proper notices. I know I've gotten letters across that took 2 weeks to go from the other side of 95 on 2 blocks away to my side of 95, 2 blocks away. But you look at the property, and like I mentioned, it's not the kind of property that will typically be built on. That overpass changes everything. And one thing I've discovered is I think we need to have a better way for people to get notified in the county, where they can sign up for an alert system so there's something that's pushed out to them. I don't see a reason based upon what the county's council said that could compel me to change my original decision. But I do hope that the applicant makes a legitimate effort to really work with the folks there, to not allow trash to be dropped if they can help it, to really work with them, to try to be a good neighbor, because that makes a big difference, those little things in life. And so that's where I'm at with it.
There were several things that were mentioned that I think were rebutted sufficiently as far as the wildlife and, like it was mentioned, this overpass is going to change the neighborhood for good, for bad. I mean, it's kind of where it's at. All of the conditions are going to have to be met, and that's why it's called a conditional use. So can we mute that, Ben? Or folks, if you're on Zoom, if you don't mind muting yourself. So I do understand where the neighbors are coming from, because I have a storage unit very near my property, and they're actually expanding, so they're going to be probably twice as big, and this board actually approved it. So it's, I do understand that. I think with the conditions, though, it's not going to necessarily change the nature, didn't change the nature of my neighborhood. And following the conditions is going to be very important for the, obviously for the person running the place. So unfortunately, I didn't feel like the elements of the reconsideration were met by a preponderance of the evidence. And once again, they have to go through still more process with building permits, site disturbance permits. So there's more that has to be done here. And along the way, our community development checks to make sure these conditions are being met. So I do understand, because when the storage facility went in by my house, I was concerned with much of these same issues, but they have followed all their conditions, and it really hasn't affected, my use of my property. So I understand the concern. I do believe, though, that the things mentioned tonight have been mitigated by the conditions, and so I too will keep my original vote to approve the project and then deny the reconsideration. So is there a motion?
I move that we approve the project, deny the reconsideration for CUP 22-0010.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. CUP 22-0010, the reconsideration has been denied. Item number 2, ZON 22-0004, Kerr Properties. And Vlad, if you're ready. Does anybody need a break? I'm good.
Thank you for asking.
Okay. Everybody here for the Kerr Properties, have you filled out? Are you the only one here? Okay. Okay, this is probably going to be, so you're Jeremy? Okay, it's going to be a quick evening.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I do believe this is a straightforward request, and I'll get into the details right away. This is a request by the applicant, Kerr Family Properties LLC, for a rezone of an 80-acre parcel of land under case number ZON 22-0004 to rezone the property from agriculture to rural. The subject property is located on the north side of Kootenai County. It's located at the intersection of Highway 53 and North Mountain View Road. The subject property is fairly flat. It is vegetated, but I do believe there's been some effort by the current owner to make like a login road or an access road to the property at this time, but I don't believe there's been any further activity on site that is indicative at this point of any other development. As I mentioned, the subject property is zoned agriculture and the comprehensive plan is suburban. I do want to explain briefly that when we have a request for a rezone of a property, we do take it very seriously. I believe that some of the comments that were made by Commissioner Matari in the previous meeting, as well as hearings in the past, are concerning to the department as well. One of the things that we look for when we assess the potential for the property to be rezoned is, from a compatibility standpoint, this is what we typically look at, is we look at the existing pattern of development in the community. And what does that mean? That basically means that we assess the existing parcel sizes and density of development and the potential of the proposed development to have an impact on the community, as well as will it be compatible in terms of similar in use and in nature with what's currently out there. In this case, what we see is we have this parcel of land that's 80 acres in size. It's surrounded by parcels that are zoned both agriculture as well as rural. And the parcels in the area range from 5 acres to 10 acres to 20 acres. So there's a mix of parcels in the area. As you may know, or perhaps some of the commissioners may not know, you cannot subdivide the property in the agricultural zone by the current regulations in Kootenai County. So the first step to be able to develop the property at a more dense design would be to rezone the property from agriculture to rural and then pursue a subdivision. This is exactly what the applicant is requesting. They're not hiding the ball. They're very forthcoming. In fact, they did submit an application for a subdivision concurrently with a zone change request. That case number is MSB 22-0007. I don't believe I can disclose a lot of information with respect to that project because those are not the merits of, or that's not the merits of the case with respect to the zone change. But I can provide some general information. In the concurrent application, the applicant wishes to subdivide the property into 16 5-acre parcels. Moving forward, these are some of the photos of the site looking at various directions. As I said, it's fairly flat. It is heavily vegetated with, I believe, a narrow logging road that was recently put in place. We did go through the agency comment period. We did solicit comments from Lakes Highway District, Idaho Department of Transportation, Panhandle Health District, and Northern Lakes Fire Protection District solely with respect to the zone change. As it relates to access, because the subject property will gain direct access off of Highway 53, it's a multi-jurisdictional review, having an approach approved by ITD, as well as having the Highway District approve any future road improvements within that property to provide access to interior parcels. So we did receive a response that future access approach will be required, and Lakes Highway District really had no comment on the zone change itself. In fact, none of the agencies really had any comments with respect to the zone change in terms of compatibility issues or things of that sort. During the first public comment period, we received 2 comments in opposition of the request, and during the second public comment period, we received 5 comments in opposition, 1 neutral, and there were only 2 comments that had explanation with respect to denial. There was 1 comment that spoke about the neutrality, but the concerns were basically not with the zone change itself, but the impacts that would be would likely be at hand should the subdivision move forward. And those concerns were with increasing traffic as well as concerns over traffic safety entering onto State Highway 53. We believe that based on the comprehensive plan analysis and the goals and policies, that the suburban designation, the primary purpose of this designation is to promote the development of vacant or underused parcel within the area that are largely developed. This is exactly the case. I mean, this is, I don't want to exaggerate, but this is a textbook case where you have existing development in the area of parcels that are a different size, much less than what this parcel is, and the intent is to develop it at the same density as the existing conditions in the area. So we believe that this request is on par with the goals and policies of the suburban comp plan designation. And as I said, the approval of the zone change would allow the applicant to move forward with the subdivision request. In fact, the applicant has taken the risk of moving forward with a subdivision public hearing process in front of the hearing examiner next month in anticipation of board support. That's totally their risk. They understand that there's a chance that they could be denied, but they felt that this is a good request. It makes sense. Staff supports it. The hearing examiner heard this request on March 16th of this year and subsequently recommended approval. As you may know, a zone change request does require a minimum of 2 public hearings, regardless of what the recommendation is from the hearing examiner. Should the board disagree with the hearing examiner's recommendation from March of this year, they will have to have a second hearing to affirm their desire or their position. If they were to disagree with the hearing examiner's approval, they could not make a decision on the matter today. That's just an FYI. I stand for any questions that you have for me at this time.
Questions?
Yeah, when you get done, Vlad, could you shut that door? Those people are loud.
Any questions?
Maybe
No.
my hearing aids are really working.
Yeah. All right, no questions, so we will get right into the applicant's presentation. So, Jeremy, oh boy, Terzulli?
Close enough.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeremy Terzulli. I'm a project coordinator with Olson Engineering based in Post Falls, Idaho. I am going to be incredibly brief. I thought the staff report, the comprehensive plan analysis, and the hearing examiner's conclusions of law were quite clear and recommended approval. Kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Vlad had said with regard to neighborhood context and the fact that the future land use map being so close to the city of Rastrum, some of these larger 80, 160 acre parcels are likely to be redeveloped per the county standards in conjunction with Panhandle Health District requiring 5 acre minimum lot sizes. And so that is our progression to go from the agricultural to the rural. And we have already submitted that application for 5 acre buildable lots in this location. Regarding the neighborhood context, and I presented this at the hearing examiner's hearing, I did a 1/2 mile radius around the property to identify the parcel sizes that exist, like I said, within a 1/2 mile of the boundary. And that count came back, parcels less than 5 acres, there were 6. Parcels of 5 acre gross, there were 158. 10 acre parcels, there were 23. Parcels greater than 10 acres, there were 4. So that is the immediate surrounding area. I did also want to note that the Highway District has had a chance to look at it. ITD has had a chance to look at it. Our owner of Olson Engineering, Eric Olson, and I did a analysis of the KMPO roadway network here. All roadways, intersections, connections, other than the roadway just before you get to Meyer Road, and I forget the name of it right now, where that residential subdivision is going in, inside of city limits. That is the only intersection that required a level of service grade, and that level of service grade comes in when a roadway or an intersection starts to meet that 70% of design capacity. All other interconnects, connections, and intersections weren't even rising to a level of service grade at this point. So with that, I'm more or less here to answer any questions that you might have. And with that, we respectfully request approval of this zone change.
Okay,
No questions.
No questions.
all right. So I would take people in favor of the,
On Zoom, we have Ivy Wynn Matheson. If you are wanting to speak on this matter, go ahead and do so.
I'll take people opposed to this. No? Anybody? Nobody. Okay. I guess there is no need for rebuttal. I do have one question for staff, and how did all these other parcels get carved up if it's all agricultural zoned?
It's likely that this kind of pattern of development occurred before 1995, in which it was possible for divisions of land without the subdivision process. And as you can see that most of them are 5 acres or greater. Anything that is less than 5 acres in size would have been created before 73. So.
Okay. All right. With no more questions, I would entertain a motion to end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I move that we end public testimony and enter into deliberations for ZON 22-0004 Kerr Properties.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Matari.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right. Are you ready to deliberate this, or do you need?
I can deliberate.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. You?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll start this one.
Okay.
You know, I've only been doing this for what, 3-4 months now?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've concluded is that we are engaged in the process of death by 1,000 cuts. That this board is really supposed to be the stewards of the county services. And right now, we are stretching county services far beyond capacity. And at what point do we say, you know, we need to let the services catch up with the growth? And I understand the use of this land. I understand the 5-acre minimum lot size. I am wholly against more growth at this point. However, I am okay with the idea of ensuring that the density can't change when we make a zoning change. And so I would be open to the idea of using the conditional zoning development agreement like we did once before to limit the subdivision to 5-acre lot sizes and nothing smaller, should that ever come before us or into the future.
Commissioners, the minimum parcel size in the rural zone is 5 acres, so they couldn't be smaller.
Well, today they couldn't be smaller.
Correct.
And they won't be because we passed an ordinance that said you can only have one septic per 5 acres
Okay.
anyway. So it's kind of a dual.
But that can't change down the road?
Which this is.
More than likely not unless they're incorporated into a city. So you have, if there's two, and Pat, you know, let me know if I get off base on this. So there's two things. You've got the zoning, which if we allow it to go to rural, that's 5-acre minimums. They can't come back and change zoning to something else that's not already surrounding it.
But what about when the cities, if they were to accept the land?
Then it doesn't matter if we have a conditional zoning agreement or not.
Yeah, it comes out of our jurisdiction at that point.
So that doesn't stay with the property?
But if it's already developed, then
I know it's less likely, but it's not uncommon.
it's not impossible. Let's put it that way. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then back that up, if they're on septic, they can only have one per 5 acres.
Yeah. No, I understand. I guess if it's going to be 5 acres, it's going to be 5 acres.
Sure. Bill?
Everybody and all politicians always say that they would like to slow down growth and go back to an easier time, and I'm all for that. But practically speaking, we've done, in this case, I think, all we can. And in the future, if it's encompassed into an area of influence by a city, we kind of lose that power.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is that I don't see it as much going back to a time as much as it's just trying to manage to the level of service that the county provides. Because even the cities, they affect that in so many ways. And that needs to be communicated to them as well.
Right.
So that's what concerns me.
Sure. And so for me, I'm in favor of the project because it matches the surrounding area. Now, what I'm approving today is the zone change. I'm not approving the subdivision. So that's going to have its own hoops to jump through, and that's going to be under much, much more scrutiny than the zone change, which happens to match the surrounding area. So I'd be in favor of this, and then when the subdivision comes before us, then that's a different animal.
Would the subdivision come before us?
100%.
Yeah, it's a major scope.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
A major, so that would be, okay. Okay.
So I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve, excuse me, I put my glasses down. ZON 22-0004, Kerr Properties.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Matari.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, ZON 22-0004 has been approved, and that is it, folks. 7:19, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.